how we talk about financial needs, and how including what we need to know about and how to get that information right at the start of working with families. There's quite a few of us at CHSR and quite a few present. So I would ask if you could all, in the chat box, add your name and the program you're from, so that we can have a good sense of, who was present today. So just your name and the program would be sufficient. And then we also want to thank everybody who completed the survey that we sent out regarding this. Amanda, who is here present today, is the person collecting and will be looking at them. And she was very excited to know that we already have like 50 of them. So thank you so much for doing that. If you have any of your FRSs or FSSs that haven't yet completed and want to, we can do that. And Amanda will be posting that link into the chat box so that you can grab it from there. Okay, let's get a start. So we know that healthy families often have significant financial needs and current difficulties. About 3/4 report that they're dealing with financial difficulties. Yes, thank you everybody for silencing, muting yourselves. So we know that 3/4 report that they're dealing with financial difficulties or insufficient income at assessment. But when it comes to more specific information about families' financial situations, we don't know as much. So we've heard that some staff have a hard time getting specific with families about their financial situations, that you don't see the need or don't know how to approach the question in a way that would make families feel comfortable. But we also know that there are some staff who are very comfortable having these conversations and getting the information. So let's talk first about why you need the information, why we need the information, and how we can get families to share that with us. For you, obviously, finances are one of the largest sources of stress for families, and thus one of the most important things to talk about and work with them on. Families' financial situations are relevant to knowing what benefits families are eligible for, making sure they're in touch with all possible resources, some of which are income dependent. In some cases, you probably don't need all that detail to know if a program is relevant, but others might have specific thresholds. So knowing a specific available monthly income is important. And knowing about family finances is also helpful for working with them on self-sufficiency goals. It's helpful to have a specific start point to know where to go from there on. On a system level, knowing things like available monthly income and number in the household helps us better understand the needs of families, and also their level or patterns of financial need or financial distress that we may see in families, both within programs and across New York. It's also important for some federal reporting. For example, proportion of families served who fall below federal poverty line, which is calculated by dividing available monthly income with number in the household. As a reminder, this is a new requirement for the HFAST as of 2023. So there are several reasons why it's important on a system level. We know then that the information is worth getting and asking about. But we also know that families have some hesitation in sharing it with us. Some feel some shame and are afraid of being judged. Some have such inconsistent income that reporting any amount is difficult. Some don't know because a partner handles the family finances. Some do off the books or under the table work. And some simply feel that it is a private matter. Some also worry about this information being shared with other government departments or agencies, resulting in ineligibility for healthy families or a loss of other benefits on which they rely on. As you know, this isn't the case, but families might fear otherwise. And we've heard also that some staff do not feel comfortable asking. Even so, some families are willing to share this information, and some staff seem to be especially skilled at gathering it. From a previous survey, we heard that some staff viewed asking about finances as a natural part of their practice and that they felt families knew they were trying to help. So let's hear now from a few of those staff on their strategies on getting the information. I'm going to turn it over now to staff from Herkimer, Wayne, Morris Heights, and Otsego to talk about how they approach gathering this information from families and, you know, from the very beginning of their relationships with their families. So welcome. I'm hoping you're all here, Arlene, Emma, Viviana, and Sarah. Are you here?
I'm here. Good afternoon, Corinne. How are you?
Okay, good. Nice to meet you here. So tell us a bit about, we discussed previously, but whoever wants to jump on first, about how you view this, you know, start of the relationship and the asking of these questions, the financial situations of families and monthly income and financial needs. Who wants to go first?
I can do it.
Okay, Emma, go ahead.
I think starting off, one of the first things that we all agreed on when we talked about this previously was that we really put an emphasis on explaining to the families that, you know, we don't judge them based off this information. We don't personally use it with them in the program, you know, things like that. It's not going to affect them getting into the program or anything like that. And then on top of that, something that I personally make sure I focus on is, I know in MIS that question is, you know, what is your monthly income? I know a lot of the demographic that I work with personally, they don't think of their income in the full month. So a lot of times if you ask that, it'll kind of catch them off guard and they have to sit there and think about doing the math, or, you know, maybe it makes them uncomfortable. So a lot of times I'll just ask, you know, how much do you make per week? And I'll write that down and do the math myself. Or even if they can't think of consistently for the week, I'll say, you know, hourly, and then maybe how many hours do you work? And I let them know, you just kind of give me a ballpark to kind of encourage them to really give me the closest answer that they can. So that's what I do.
Thanks, Emma. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, Corinne, I think it's, you know, when you start doing the visits, it's just like one of those common things that we talk about is self-sufficiency and the successes and the challenges. And like, if you're resourcing, you know, there's eligibility in their income requirements. And usually those topics just come up and it becomes a natural conversation.
Thank you, Arlene. Who's next?
Viviana.
Hey,
I
Viviana.
Hi. I think that also reassuring them that providing the income does not affect their eligibility in the program. I think that's very important because most of the times families are just used to providing this income, like for instance, for SNAPs, for any assistance programs that they're just worried that, oh, if I do provide that, probably I'm not going to be eligible. So perhaps that can definitely be a way to introduce it. And also just before just coming out and ask the question, before asking, just explain why do we need that information, or what is it going to be used for, so that they
Thank
can
you.
feel comfortable as well answering it.
Thank you, Viviana. Sarah, are you available?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I kind of missed the beginning because my stuff wasn't working.
Oh, that's awful. But what we were saying is, like if you could share with the big group here, there's quite a few of program staff present. If you could share, these ideas of how you go about discussing financial needs and monthly income with your families right from the start of the relationship with them. Any ideas that you can throw that, a way that makes it easier to discuss this with families? And I think that, you had mentioned about previously to us about ways that you try to use this information in a way like, not getting like you asking the question, but adapting to whatever your families know and do, right?
Sure. So, upon intake, when it comes to that question, about what their monthly income is, or, I ask them, are you employed? And then, when I ask that question, I say to them, listen, it doesn't matter to me whether or not you have a job or not. If you want to gain employment, we can, talk about that like as we go along the program. But I'm just gathering some statistical information, so it doesn't matter to me, whether or not you're employed. So I just let them know that there's no judgment on how much they make, how little they make, how if it's zero or not, or whatever.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much, all four of you, for joining in. So we've established that the information is important. And as you've heard from Viviana, Arlene, Sarah, and Emma, it is doable to gather it from families. So let's talk about these conversations and how they're translated into the MIS data, specifically family available monthly income and number of people in the household. These items first come up on the intake form. So it's specifically important for FSSs to look at what I'm going to share right now. And that is that a short version of it is that this information is missing almost all of the time. More specifically, of the 1,744 new cases across the state in 2021, available monthly income was missing at intake in over 80% of cases. That's a huge number of people whose specific financial situation is unknown. So we know from assessment that most of them generally have financial needs, but have no idea about extent, degree of need, etc. And even when we do get information and we do get this answered in the MIS, sometimes there are some problems. Here is a distribution of available monthly income with responses, and they're chunked up in 500 increments. We have a decent chunk of cases in the high end here circled in red, where over 7,000 a month was recorded, up to 70,000 a month. Yes, you heard correctly. 70,000 a month was reported. This makes me think that perhaps, available annual income was recorded, not monthly, or the response is off by a decimal place, like, they meant to say 70,000, they meant to say 7,000, and they just put the comma in the wrong place. We're not saying that if you make more than 6,000 a month, you will have no financial needs, but we know our families tend to be low income and high needs. So this here makes us wonder. We're going to break out into smaller discussion groups later and come up with strategies to gather information, extending on what our guests have shared. And we're going to start off with 3 example strategies based on what they've said that you can build off and come up with new ideas. So one of the strategies shared was, that we thought about was, how about you use an intro script to lower that threat level of the question and motivate sharing? A bit of what Sarah was saying, like maybe if you have a script that could tell PCs that many of the families we serve have financial struggles, normalizes their situation. Telling them that we use this info to connect them with other benefits gives a reason to share. Telling them, and I think Emma had said something like that, telling them that it doesn't impact their eligibility and that it won't be reported outside of groups, as Viviana mentioned, that removes a reason to withhold. Remember that approximate is better than nothing. So building off of these ideas, I know it can sometimes be hard for families to give an exact monthly income. So whether, it could be because they don't want to share specific or don't know quite about them. But as much as we love exact data, it's also okay if, they share approximate monthly income. Some info is always going to be better than no information at all. And the answer itself is often variable anyways. So if a family seems hesitant, maybe you could prompt with some categories, basically intervals of, for example, $500 a month. Or you could start off with like, okay, 0, you make no money because you're not working, no money, and to tell you the truth, that a third of the cases where we have income data, this is what was recorded. Then you could go, well, do you make less than 100, between 100 and 500, and then go in intervals of 500 up to like 4,000. I mean, if there's more than this, that's okay, but it's pretty rare that someone is above this point anyway. If we see fewer missings and more just approximate 1,000 a month being recorded in the MIS, we're going to be thrilled. And again, I think that some of our guests said it, if monthly income isn't as relevant for your families, is there any other unit of time that is more concrete and known? Do they know that a bi-weekly paycheck is about 700 and they get some more money, so they come up with 800 every 2 weeks? You can take down whatever they say and do the math when you're in your office again, so that, I wouldn't be able to make the math in the same moment, but, before data entry, take a look at what it is that they said and translate in order for us to get monthly income. To summarize, use an intro script to lower the threat level, motivate sharing. Remember that approximate is better than nothing. Use whatever unit of time is most appropriate for your families.
Corinne, Vivian has a question.
Okay, Vivian.
One that has magnets, it comes apart.
Where are you,
Hey,
Vivian?
I'm
I
here.
can't see you.
Corinne, I have a question because on the form, there's a little box that it says unknown. And I'm just wondering if that, is giving some sort of like a pass, like, oh, because it's unknown, just, don't ask or not use the script or, any other strategy to get the numbers, because I've been an intake, the family goes like, I don't have to share that with you. And even if the home visitor, is playing, we're not going to share with anybody else and stuff. They still like, yeah, I'm not saying, and again, just wondering if that little box kind of give a pass, like, some family, they're resistant to share. So I just going to check unknown.
Yeah. Well, Vivian, that's the hope of making this webinar and starting these discussions, to try and get, make home visitors understand the importance of it. And as we heard from our 4 guests, that it is something that there are ways of getting around this. Of course, you're always going to get those families that don't want to share, and that's okay too, but I understand what you're saying, that maybe that having that little box gives it, or makes it easier for the FSS to just not answer. But we're wanting to, by understanding why it is important, maybe we get more. And again, approximate is good, and making sure that the math kind of like works out so that we don't have like those big errors that we have right now. And if we can improve in any way the data collection piece of it, we're going to be thrilled, because we're going to see a big difference. So I don't think we're going to take it out, but it is a good thing for you to discuss among your FSSs the importance of why we're collecting, and maybe that will make them, by using the scripts that we're going to hopefully develop today, maybe that will make them want to make sure that they're collecting that information. Okay.
Corinne, there's another question in the chat.
Okay.
So do you want me to read it to you, or can you see?
I see here, Holly, is that if it is missing an intake, would it be in the follow-up? Well, the first time that we collected is in the intake, but of course the question is asked again in the follow-up. So you could if let's say if a family you've established a better relationship and now they are open to sharing with you, by all means update by the time the follow-up comes. Yeah.
And then it looks like Kara also has her hand raised.
Kira, go ahead.
My question, Corinne, is I thought I heard you say this information is now going to be required on the HFAS.
Yeah, they're asking for how many, they're asking for low income households. So we will need to establish that by dividing the monthly income by the number in the household. So yes, that is going to be a new requirement for the 2023 HFAST. So that's why we're interested in making sure that we have better numbers for them for HFA.
So will the information be drawn directly from it, or will we have to do the calculations in order to input it into HFAS? Will it be directly pulled from the MIS, sorry, or will we have to be doing the calculations ourselves?
Well, you know that we have an HFAS report that usually does the calculations for it. So when it's added, it's most likely going to be added to that HFAS report that we have in the MIS. So the MIS will do the math for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Because of how I have my screens, I don't have I see Susan has raised her hand. Susan, are you okay? Any questions?
No, I just had a question, but it piggybacks on the question in the chat. So if you can address that question first, that would
Which one is it? Which one is it? I can't see the
It
chat.
is from Heather. So she says that sometimes she's noticed in a form review that a staff member will collect info from employment, but not the total income on the family. So
well, that's specifically, thank you, Heather. Those two questions that I posted on the slide, question, I have to go back now, but the two questions on intake, is it 28 and 29 or something, where it asks for monthly income and number of people in the household. Those are the ones that we need to do better at collecting.
My question, which I asked this thinking that maybe some folks on the call may be running into this, I don't know. So if you're asking a family member about their income, but say they only know their income, but they don't know the household income because, their brother-in-law is living with them for the past year and they have no idea how much money he makes. How would someone report that? Because there is additional income coming in, they know he makes some money, but they have absolutely no idea what he makes. So in the in the realm of collecting some info is better than no info, how would staff members handle that in terms of the accuracy of the data collection? I don't know if folks have run into this. I'm just thinking maybe they have, and how they should be handling that.
Yeah, and again, I think that approximate numbers are going to be the way, and I know that the data might not be exact, but we're hoping that, in that relationship, you can say like, okay, so approximately how much do you think is added to them? Because if you're counting the brother-in-law as a member of the household, you might want to. If the PC1 is answering just for themselves and, like their child, that's another. So, it will depend on what the situation is. And again, this is like, gather as much information as you can. Everything is going to be better than 80% missing as we have right now. You might have to leave that particular case out because you don't have information, and that's okay. But if all home visitors, try to get more information and more of this question answered, we're not going to run into an 80% missing. That is what we're trying to avoid. Okay, good. So now it's time to move on and go to the small groups and try to come up with some language to help introduce these ideas that we discussed. And I've put up some in this slide, some that we've developed in preparation for today, but you might have intro scripts of your own that it would be great if you could share in your small group. If you don't, because this is not something that you usually do with families, or you're one of the ones that are clicking the unknown button and continue to the next question in the intake form, then it would be great if you take your time during these 15 minutes to think about how you would introduce these ideas and adapt them to whatever might work for you, and share with your other people in the room. And then we come back and try to debrief and see whether we have any ideas that we can share amongst all. So Erin will be assigning you to the breakout rooms. And I am going to stop sharing for a second because I think it's going to make it easier. And then we'll come back and I'll start sharing again. How about that?
So you should see something come up on your screen, and you should just click it and go to the assigned breakout room.
Good job. Oh, that was excellent, Erin. Look.
Working seriously behind the scenes there.
Yes.
Erin has so much.
With everybody, oh, there you go, they're coming back. That discussion was awesome.
Any chance that you can make it a bit bigger?
Tiny.
I don't know. Let me see.
I see the Zoom on the.
Oh, yeah. That better?
That's better.
Yeah,
That's better.
Okay, so everybody seems to be back.
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Erin.
perfect. So we're going to do some sharing out of some of the ideas that you came up with in your breakout rooms. For those of you that have not used this Google Jamboard before, it is a place where we can store our ideas. And so I'm going to add, I've already put some on here based on some of the suggestions that we have gotten, especially from those that talked earlier. But I'd like to include a few more on here, and then I will paste the link for all of you in the chat so you can continue to use this Jamboard, both as a resource for sharing your ideas, as well as if you feel stuck with a family and you need some ideas on how to approach this topic, you can come to this Jamboard and look at some of the other ideas that people have posted. So if maybe we'll start with breakout room 1. So if you remember being in that room, or if you were the facilitator in that room, if you can share some of the ideas that you came up with during your discussion.
Okay, I was the facilitator. We had some, a few contributions, and I'm hoping that the folks who made those contributions will, add them. One of the things that was mentioned was that that one person mentioned that the only time they ever had a problem Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Was there? Oh, that the only time they ever had a problem getting the information was when it was a child who, the parent was living in like a grandparent's house or a parent's house, and they didn't necessarily know the income of the parent or grandparent, like especially if they were not the child themselves, but they were the spouse of the child. That they, I don't think they necessarily had access to that information.
Yes, and again, we know that we won't be able to have that information in 100% of the cases, and that's not what we're going for. We're trying to improve on that 80% missing. So, we understand that in certain cases that information won't be available for us. Thank you, Amy. Anybody else?
I also share that sometimes a challenge would be like when families have like unstable jobs, and perhaps this week they work like for 2 days and next week 1 day, it gets like more difficult for them, perhaps like a stress, like, oh, I don't know how to determine that. But I feel that with the support that we may give them, like, oh, okay, I can probably help you with that, may relieve some of the stress, and we'll be able to provide that information with our help too.
Thank you, Viviana.
And what I was sharing was that sometimes they're not sure of what are the resources that they actually get funds coming into the home. So having a list saying, do you get funds from this source, from this source, from this source, may help them to broaden their span as to where the money may be coming from.
That's excellent, Kara. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, what about some of the other breakout rooms? Breakout room 2?
I was the facilitator of group 2, and that our group had some great ideas. First, they mentioned that, the families can sometimes read the comfort level from the worker, like body language. And so we had kind of talked about having role-playing groups to get ideas from other staff, and the role-playing groups could create a feeling of more comfort asking these questions. So I thought that was a really great idea. They also mentioned that it's very important to let the families know what's going to be done with this information, that it's not going to be shared with other agencies, that it's actually going to help create better referrals and more resources for the family, because they just need to know that they're in a safe space.
Awesome.
We also mentioned that they could prompt financial conversations by saying, hey, how's your like selling your stuff on Etsy going, or how's your home business going? And it could really kind of promote like positive reinforcement, like, hey, you're doing this really well, your sales on Etsy are doing well, and how's that impacting the financial situation in your household? Anybody else from group 2? We had some really great conversations.
That's great. Thank you, Corey.
I was just thinking like another question you could ask that you're not like directly asking necessarily, just a door opener, but is, something along the lines perhaps of, are you, especially if it's summertime, are you worried about heating costs coming up? Are you making a plan for that, or, is that included in your rent, or, whatever?
Excellent.
I think I had mentioned using handouts from FSU. I know I had done an observation on one of my family support specialists, and she used a handout on itemizing all your bills, and that required for the family to share their household income. And so in compare the two, or how much you're spending versus how much is coming in. And so that pretty much gave us a clear cut of what the family income was, by just pretty much doing an activity.
Awesome.
But is that like are you talking about a budget, Yulene?
Yeah, I forget the title. It's on FSU. It was on the prenatal book. Yeah, but it was neat. It was neat. It pretty much asked the family, to itemize all the bills, and it took probably less than 10 minutes, and then they were able to let us know the exact amount of income.
Oh, you're muted, Yuleni.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I said it gave us an exact number of what the family makes and the exact amount of or total of bills for the month and what they had left over.
Mm-hmm. And the family was okay with sharing that.
Yeah. She was pretty
okay.
open. Like she gave us the.
Okay.
And I would say, and so that prompted us to give a referral, because I just had learned that the MTA was hiring. And so that prompted us to talk about making more money and how that will benefit the family because it was struggling financially. And we were able to give her a referral to apply for a job, and they were able to do.
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
So groups 3, 4, 5, or 6, any additional helpful strategies or things to say that haven't already been covered?
So we were group 5, and a few things that came up that haven't come up quite yet are also folks really have no idea what, a boyfriend or whoever makes. Then maybe you can ask, well, where do they work? How many hours a week do they work? How long have they been there? To get a sense of, or okay, they're working minimum wage at, Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, 20 hours a week, and get some sense, and then kind of just do the math in your head. And another thing they mentioned, if someone doesn't really have any idea what, the roommate's boyfriend makes or something, ask some probing questions about if they even contribute to the household. So is their income even relevant in terms of household income? So, well, does that person ever buy groceries for everybody? Do they ever pay towards the, the Wi-Fi or whatever? Just to even get some sense of how much you may even need that info of, the random person kind of living in the house for a while. The other things they talked about too were, if someone doesn't necessarily know, I guess to the point of where the money is going, is, well, do you get income from DSS? Yes. Well, how much? I don't know. They pay my rent. Okay. Well, how much is your rent? Do they pay half your rent? Do they pay all your rent? So other ways of getting at the info, even if someone doesn't have a hardcore number that they're aware of, that's really all about the probing questions.
Excellent.
Our group 4 had a couple other ideas, certainly the emphasis on the engagement and creating a comfortable, exchange with your family, getting to know, maybe some details or some information even before you go to visit, so you can kind of prompt with some knowledge. Certainly, just emphasizing some of those other interviewing skills of sharing that power, it's your choice how much you want to share, or even acknowledging maybe it's hard for families to share this the very first time we meet, and I'll try to catch that information next time after we've gotten a chance to know each other.
Perfect. Thank you.
Breakout room 3 had an additional thought. I won't repeat what was already mentioned, but something that is new is, instead of asking about income, you can ask about expenses and try to get a thought of monthly income that way.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing that was mentioned in group 2. Sarah had a really great idea that, sometimes this particular question comes early in the intake meeting, and just wait till the very end, skip to the very end of your conversation before bringing up financials and income, just to, again, try to create more of a safe space for the families.
Great.
Great.
And Corinne, you saved the best for last, group 6. So I'll be really brief because I just cut off my boss, Aaron, here. So I know we're most of the time. So our group agreed that it was really important to kind of provide context of why financial information is being collected. But at least one of our members thought that kind of asking very direct questions might be helpful to the family or participants. So how many people would you say how many people in your household are working, and how many people live in your house, how many are working, and that these kind of more direct questions without the additional context might actually make more sense to some of the participants.
Thank you, Tyler.
So I'm going to
Okay.
stop sharing. And I'm going to post the link to this Jamboard in the chat, so everyone who would like to can access it, and feel free to share it with anyone that you think might benefit.
And you know what? The good thing about what Aaron, the Jamboard thing, is that if you think of others, like have other ideas, you can keep on adding. And when we release the video, the recorded video of today's meeting, that is still going to be live. So people can still add, even if they weren't present today, they could still add, and we can all benefit from them. So it's a great tool. Thank you. Thank you, Erin. So let's wrap up for today. Thanks again for joining us. This topic and information is clearly important for both us as a system and for our families. So thank you so much. And we know that this topic can be sensitive and personal. So we want you to remember that we ask lots of other stuff that are, difficult and hard. So let's add finances to that list of hard topics worth getting specific about. And hopefully you'll use these ideas and be able to do that and continue to share. Otherwise, here at CHSR, we are continuing to think about how, as a system, we can provide more support around financial literacy and assessing financial needs on an ongoing basis. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future sessions, or would like to talk about how your program can do more in this area, please let us know. So thank you all. Thanks to all the facilitators. Thanks, Erin. And hope to see you soon, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye.